And I now give the floor to this distinguished representative of Sri Lanka.
Mr. President, thank you for giving me the floor. Distinguished delegates, Excellencies, it is said that a stronger United Nations is necessary to build a resilient world. Efforts to make the United Nations efficient, effective, and accountable, therefore, must continue, together with efforts to reform the Security Council, revitalize the General Assembly, and strengthen the Economic and Social Council. Regular consultations with member states, both formal and informal, must continue, as will regular interaction with the presidents of the Security Council and the Economic Social Council and the Secretary General. Mr. President, it must be appreciated that the revitalization of the General Assembly is a political process, and its principal objective should be to strengthen the role of the General Assembly as the main deliberative, policy-making, and representative organ of the United Nations. In addition, my delegation believes that the attempts to undermine the role played by the General Assembly through perceived encroachment must be neutralized. Revitalization, therefore, these efforts within the United Nations organization can be focused on principal areas. Permit me the indulgence, Excellencies, to refer to a few of the key areas where revitalization must be undertaken. Firstly, the strengthening role of the General Assembly is of utmost importance. The General Assembly being the main deliberative body of the United Nations, revitalization efforts must focus on enhancing its decision-making power, ensuring greater representation of member states, and promoting transparency and accountability. Secondly, reforming the Security Council, of course, appears the buzzword in revitalization, particularly in the context of contemporary times. The Security Council, as we know, plays a vital role in maintaining international peace and security. They cannot be seen to abdicate that obligation. Revitalization efforts, therefore, can be directed towards making the Security Council more representative, more inclusive, and more effective in addressing current global challenges. Thirdly, enhancing the effectiveness of the Secretariat. The Secretariat is responsible, as we know, for carrying out the day-to-day work of the United Nations. Revitalization efforts can focus on streamlining and improving its functioning, including through reforms in recruitment, decision-making processes, and budgetary practices. Fourthly, the strengthening of coordination and cooperation between the United Nations agencies is of equal importance. The United Nations systems include a wide range, as we know, of specialized agencies, programs, and funds. Revitalization, therefore, Excellencies, efforts can concentrate, I say, on enhancing coordination and cooperation amongst these entities to maximize their collective impact and avoid duplication of efforts. Fifthly, promoting the engagement of civil society and non-state actors, although not altogether popular, must be given greater consideration, having regard to contemporary events and the present global security instability. Instability in the revitalization process, where efforts can aim to increase the participation and involvement of civil society organizations, non-governmental organizations, and other non-state actors in the work of the United Nations. Now this, I say, can be achieved through greater inclusion in decision-making processes and consultations. My delegation is of the considered view that when it comes to revitalization, we may also consider perhaps strengthening peacekeeping operations. Now, peacekeeping is a critical function of the United Nations. So revitalization efforts can focus, I say, on improving the efficacy and the effectiveness of peacekeeping missions, including through better training, equipment, coordination, as well as enhanced partnerships with regional organizations. Next, I believe that addressing the financial sustainability of the United Nations is important. Now, ensuring financial sustainability excellencies of the UN is crucial for its operations. So revitalization efforts can involve exploring innovative funding mechanisms, improving the budget allocations, and encouraging timely and full payment of member contributions, a matter that must perhaps not escape our focus when discussing matters of finance is the imperative need, I say, to enhance the budgetary provisions of the Office of the PGA from the regular budget, and would respectfully submit that the Fifth Committee and the ACABQ gives this aspect their earnest consideration as a matter of priority. Then, prioritizing the Sustainable Development Goals. Can it be of any lesser importance? The SDGs, as you know, provide a comprehensive framework for addressing global challenges, such as poverty, inequality, climate change. So revitalization efforts can emphasize the integration of the SDGs into the work of the UN. Strengthen, then finally, the Human Rights Council. The Human Rights Council plays a vital role, as we know, in promoting and protecting human rights globally. So revitalization can concentrate on enhancing the Council's effectiveness, improving communications and outreach. Revitalization efforts must focus, I say, on enhancing the UN's communication strategies to increase public awareness and understanding of its work. Excellencies, it is important to note that revitalization efforts should be undertaken through inclusive and a consultative process involving member states, civil society, and other relevant stakeholders. So whilst reaffirming the resolution 73/341 of September 2019 and 74/303 of September 2020, and all of the previous resolutions adopted by consensus related to revitalization of the work of the Assembly, my delegation would like to recall to this Assembly of the role and authority of the General Assembly and the strict respect of the Charter-based prerogatives and the division of work amongst the principal organs of the United Nations. We might also recall that during the 70th and the 71st session, the Assembly adopted a landmark resolution on the revitalization of the work of the General Assembly, 70/305 and 71/323, which, amongst other things, established an oath of office and a code of conduct for the President of the General Assembly and provided for informal interactive dialogue with candidates for the position of the General Assembly. Mr. President, let me very quickly turn to the circumstances of the smaller jurisdictions. It has been difficult, I say, a difficult task to attend to all high-level and side events organized in parallel with a general debate. As such, we suggest that the side events organized in parallel with the general debate of the General Assembly should be kept to a minimal, and this has been said time and again by previous delegations. We remain hopeful that this aspect would be addressed as a matter of priority in the future. Another aspect that I thought we should focus on is the opportunity for multiple statements being made prior to adopting or voting on a resolution. You will recall that member states are entitled to make a general statement on the resolution discussed, followed by an explanation of vote before the vote and after the vote, and finally to 2 rights of reply or a reply to a failure to economize on time, which compels the extension of time frames allocated to several committees and consequent costs and of unavailability of support services such as interpreters and connected backup staff. We should also like to see greater consultation between the Secretariat and the Member States in the structuring of the programs of work, particularly those of an informal nature. Mr. President, let us remind ourselves that the first 3 words of the Charter of the United Nations are "we the peoples." These are the 3 words. We must therefore move with vigor, I say, to bring the United Nations closer to the people of the world, while also recognizing cultural diversity. We must facilitate those interactions and make the UN a forum for all. Mr. President, we remain hopeful, and we have reason to believe that the working methods of the Assembly could be made more meaningful under your leadership in times to come with the efforts in revitalization work. Before I conclude, I think I would be remiss in my duties if I was not to thank or congratulate the ambassadors Mitch Pfeiffer and Griselda Lopez, the former co-chairs, for their commitment to revitalization, and Ambassadors Colonel Ferruta and Minisa Rambali of St. Lucia, who have succeeded to the task with great enthusiasm. We assure you, sir, to them, Sri Lanka's unstinted cooperation in this undertaking. And finally, may I conclude by highlighting the need to maintain transparency, to maintain democracy and inclusivity of all member states in this endeavor, which would be vital, I say, in realizing the targets envisioned under the 2030 agenda. I thank you. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Sri Lanka.